Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. I'd like to welcome you, dear viewers, to another in the series, In the Light of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah's peace and blessings be on each and every one of you. In today's episode, we're beginning with a question from a new Muslim by the name of Sarah Makilan. She writes, asking, if a person is delivering a baby in Europe and there are no men around to call the adhan in the baby's ear, what should she do? The issue here of calling the adhan, first and foremost, it's important for us to know that the calling of the adhan is not a requirement. A child is born, although as a general practice, Muslims want that the first words or first sound that the child hears at the time of birth be the name of God or a call to prayer. That somehow this would remain in the psyche of the child and would invite the child to prayer. Of course, the reality is that this call to prayer is not going to, make a difference in the child's life. The majority of early Muslims, those who accepted Islam, in the time of the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, that whole generation, which was the best generation of Muslims, none of them were born hearing the adhan in their ear. So, the issue of hearing the adhan or not hearing the adhan is not one which is ultimately going to determine, whether a child remains righteous or becomes righteous or whatever. And the fact of the matter is that the narrations or traditions which have attributed to the Prophet, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, the instruction to people to call the adhan in the right ear and the iqamah in the left ear, or merely to call the adhan in the ear of the child, according to the scholars of hadith, these narrations are in fact not authentic. So it is not something which is required of us. If one wishes to do so, it's perfectly okay. It's not a requirement, but it's perfectly okay. If you want to just say, Bismillah in the main ear of the child instead, whatever you feel to do, you want the child to hear Allah's name, Allahu Akbar, whatever, you may do this. And of course the issue comes up here. This woman is now in a state, she's just given birth to the child. So, as I said, she herself, she's given birth to a child in Europe. The doctors are all non-Muslims. So the child is given to her right immediately after the birth. The child is given to her. If the child is not sick or has any particular problems, given to her. At that time, she can say something in the ear of the child. This is what I'm suggesting. If she wants to say something, Bismillah, or even if she wants to make the adhan, she can do it. It's no harm. But not believing that it is a must. Now, the question naturally arises with this: how can a woman who is in a state of nifas or postnatal bleeding recite the adhan? Or how should a woman recite the adhan at all? Because we know that the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, said that for when a woman is making prayer, then she has to do neither adhan nor iqamah. This is not a requirement. But it should be noted that a number of Muslim scholars do hold, of the major scholars do hold, that it is permissible for her to do the iqamah. The point which is discouraged Islamically is for her to stand up, in an open place and start to call the adhan, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, as the men do. This is not really befitting for the woman, her being a more modest individual, etc. So this is what is really not required of her. But if she wants to recite the adhan in her home, there's nothing, Islam doesn't say that it is not permissible for her. She may do so within the confines of her home or her room, whatever. Now, the other issue that comes up, as I mentioned, that she's in a state of postnatal bleeding. So some would argue or say, well, how can she say the name of Allah when she's in this state? Well, the point is that it is cultural. It's a cultural concept that a woman in a state of postnatal bleeding or menses, any of those type of things, states, is not permitted to say the name of Allah. This is not the case. It is not forbidden in Islam for her to mention the name of Allah. If she wishes to read the Quran, to recite the Quran, it is perfectly legitimate for her to do so. There is actually no evidence to forbid her from doing so. Some would argue, well, she's not allowed to make salah, to pray. So some say, well, reciting Quran is salah. But the fact of the matter is that reciting the Quran is not salah, formal prayer. These are two different circumstances. For formal prayer to be accepted, a woman has to be in a state of purity, tahara, made by either ghusl or wudu, the washing, ablutions, washing of the hands, feet, face, etc. This is a requirement, as Prophet ﷺ said. No formal prayer is accepted without this state of wudu or ablution. So that condition is unique to the formal prayer. But if she wants to supplicate, she just wants to make a general prayer at any time she feels like, does Islam require her to be in a state of ablution? Absolutely not. And it is reported by the words of the Prophet, may God's peace and be upon him, that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to recite the Quran in all his different states, in whatever situation he was in, states, etc., except when he was in a state of janaba, that is sexual defilement. After having sexual relations, that state that one enters, of defilement, ritual defilement, until one makes a ghusl, a complete bath. In that state, he didn't used to recite the Quran. This is authentic. However, he did not forbid anyone from doing so. He did not instruct anybody not to do so. This was his personal preference. So, we can conclude with the idea that a woman may recite the Quran in a state of nifas or postnatal bleeding, if she wishes to do so. She can call the adhan or say some words, Arabic words, mentioning the name of Allah in the ear of the child, if she wishes to do so. It is not a requirement on her. And furthermore, we pointed out that a woman, though she's not required to make the adhan or the iqamah before prayer, in her home, whatever, if she wishes to make the iqamah, a number of the legal scholars hold that it's quite permissible for her to do so. Even the adhan, in her own home. The second question, also from a convert Muslim, by the name of Muhammad Saavedra in Sharjah, he writes, Dear Dr. Bilal, I'm a newly converted Muslim. Is circumcision a must? And why was it instituted in the first place? As a newly converted Muslim, the issue of circumcision, may present itself as a very scary proposition.